Hi, RV Renovation Nation. Welcome to the New Look RV Renovation podcast,
where we want to empower and entertain RV renovators with relevant information, ideas, and stories that'll help you give that RV a new look.
We're your hosts. I'm April.
And I'm Derek.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening and on YouTube if you're watching.
And on this episode, we're going to be talking about how we approach RV renovation from a design perspective.
So,
where do we start?
It all starts with shopping.
Shopping for the RV, right?
No. Really? You think that's the first part? I think the first part is shopping for the throw pillows and the pretty pulls and the pretty lights.
All the stuff we put in at the end is an afterthought.
It's an afterthought for you, potentially, but I'm thinking about that months before you're shopping for an RV.
I believe it because there's a lot of times when we haven't even gotten an RV yet, and April already knows all the color palettes. She knows what we're doing in it, and there's really no decisions left for everybody else to make. But I try.
I do that intentionally.
So you find some sort of inspiration ahead of time, and you're probably finding that where online?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm constantly looking at Instagram and Pinterest, in magazines. Obviously, we watch like HGTV, just pulling from different designers and ideas.
And is it things that like are really speaking to you at the moment, or is it just like creative ideas that you think you might want to just try out?
I think it's an overall style that I'm drawn to, but also a lot of times my design starts with a main color. And so whether that's, white and black or white and a green color or whatever it is, I think I personally tend to start with the color palette and work from there backwards, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And then you generally put together like some design boards and kind of map it out, and you present it to me as here's what it's going to look like. And
yeah, I put together a whole mood board, and it's really kind of fun to see that initial mood board and then watch as the RV renovation unfolds and see if that mood board really plays out. And surprisingly, it really does, I think.
Yeah, and it's kind of, it makes sense to me, but I'm a little bit more of a visual person in the sense that I want to be in the actual RV that we're renovating before I start like visually picturing, what wall is what and what color the cabinets are and that sort of thing. But that kind of brings us to the point where we actually do find an RV that we buy and purchase and decide to renovate, and we get it home. Then we typically have a design meeting or two.
Yeah, we go out in the RV and have a cup of coffee or a White Claw and kind of go over our options. And I think the big thing that we initially decide on is what's going to stay in the RV and what's going to go, what's going to get demoed out.
I think that's a great place to start too, because the more you can save and reuse, you're going to keep the renovation costs down. Obviously, it's less work. It could be less time. Anything that we do pull out, we generally try to keep intact so that we can either sell, on Marketplace if it's like a couch or something, or we can donate to a place like Restore where somebody else might use it down the road in a different project.
Yeah, or even with our last renovation, we were able to donate all the cushions from the bench, from the dinette area to a local animal shelter. That's
right. Yeah. So that's, seeing that kind of stuff get put to use and not end up in a landfill, I think is just a big win.
Definitely a win for us and for the earth.
And so we're in the RV. We're doing this design meeting.
We've now drank 3 cups of coffee.
3 cups of coffee. April's thrown out color palettes. She's saying like these cabinets are this color, and then she'll have to show me what that color really is, because usually I don't know the names of the color and what that actually correlates with.
It kind of reminds me, we're also wedding photographers, and anytime we sit down with a bride and, I'm of course having like some chit chat and finding out about their wedding, and I'll say, what color are the bridesmaids' dresses, or what color are your flowers? And a bride will say like periwinkle or whatever the color may be. And I know exactly what she's talking about. And it's just over Derek's head.
I just have to have it not transcribed. What's the word when you convert something from one language to the other?
Translated?
Translated. That's right. I just have to have a girl talk color translator on hand. But so we're out there and we're talking about what's going to stay, what's going to go, what's going to get painted or turned into what color. We're looking around, identifying accent walls.
Yeah, I would say that's one of the big things we start off with is with every renovation, we like to give some things to the RV that make it feel a lot more homey. And accent walls is one of those. And so there's a plethora of options of accent walls that you can add to an RV.
Yeah, and I think maybe we'll just do a whole episode on accent walls sometime.
Oh, my.
I could talk for hours.
About accent walls.
About accent walls in
so
an RV.
What are some of the accent walls we've done so far?
Of course, so shiplap, board and batten. We've done some different, drawn-on walls. We've done some stenciling. So the list goes on and on.
Yeah. Do you remember the first accent wall that we ever did in our first travel trailer renovation that we did for ourselves?
Do I want to?
That wallpaper. So I found this super cute wallpaper that I had big plans of us putting behind the bed in our travel trailer. And the wall was slanted, which made it a little more difficult. I finally talked Derek into going out to the RV with me to try to apply the wallpaper. I thought it was probably like an hour project. Our kids were going to be home from school soon. We totally had time to go out there and get it done.
Meanwhile, it was probably, getting to be summertime. It was probably like 90 degrees out. So we were in there.
Humid. Wisconsin's humid when it's hot.
We were sweating, and I think I ran a time lapse of this whole process. So somewhere we have that. But it was a struggle. The struggle was real to get this wallpaper.
Wallpaper can be a struggle.
We had to get it lined up and, on the wall properly. And it was definitely a team building exercise.
Yeah, we exchanged a few words that day, if I remember correctly.
But we stayed married, and the wallpaper got up and looked decent.
It looked good, yeah.
Yeah, we were proud of ourselves.
Yeah, we got it up. We got the kids off the bus, made them a snack, went on with our night. The next morning, we went back out to the travel trailer to work on some other things, and
the wallpaper was on the ground.
Aw, I could have cried. I probably did cry.
You probably cried. That was the end of wallpaper, and we've thought about using it a couple different times in some of these renovations. We've actually went as far as to buy some.
Yeah, I think each renovation I sneak in, like in the mood board, wallpaper ideas. Derek usually shuts those down during those design meetings.
Or I find a much easier and more practical way to paint or draw it on.
I think that initial wallpaper catastrophe, can I call it a catastrophe?
It was a catastrophe.
I think it really jaded you when it comes to wallpaper.
Yeah, I'm definitely nervous about wallpaper.
So all you RV renovators out there that do wallpaper, kudos to you.
Right, but I think we also have a little bit of challenges here in Wisconsin with extreme summer heat and humidity, and then cold winters. And I don't know that that's super favorable for a lot of adhesives, including the ones that would be involved in wallpaper. So that's another reason that I picked to avoid it. It's just I'm worried about the longevity.
That makes sense, and that's fair. And I'm sure anyone buying an RV appreciates that.
I hope so.
In addition to the wallpaper wall that wasn't so successful, some other options that have worked really well for us are board and batten, some different wood designs, shiplap. What else have we done?
Just stenciling again and
faux brick,
drawing on with markers, painting. I think that kind of rounds it out. We also did foam tiles.
Oh, yeah. Foam ceiling tiles we did as a behind the bed in the Wildwood renovation, and I really liked that.
Yeah, it added dimension and design and color. It was cool.
It was still very lightweight, too. I think that's really an important thing to consider when putting in an accent wall in a travel trailer or a fifth wheel, is that you want to consider weight that you're putting in. You don't want to be adding, a ton of weight with wood. And so that's why we personally make our own shiplap. So we take either a 1/4 inch or an 1/8 inch plywood, or some people call it luan board, and we rip that down into strips.
Yeah, and boards, really. Usually, and the cool part about this, too, is that you can customize how wide they are. So
true.
If there's a magic number that'll fit on the wall, you're not tied to, whatever the material width is from the store. You can, if it needs to be 6 1/4 and that'll fit in an even quantity up and down the wall, well, then you can make it yourself.
That sounds like a lot of math.
It is. There's a lot of elementary math involved in RV renovation. Who would have thought?
It's just elementary math?
That's as far as I ever got. Just kidding. I probably had Algebra 1.
You went to college?
I did. I went to college. It doesn't mean I went to class. But I did graduate college, all kidding aside. It was a good.
Did you not take many math classes?
I took as few as possible. I really did. And
good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know, ladies.
Bachelor of Communications, so.
And he's so great at communicating.
Yeah. So yeah, we rip our own shiplap boards, so they're lightweight. You can customize the size. When we're installing them, we just use some construction adhesive and some little brad nails. We try to be sure to make sure the brad nails are going into the wall studs. You got to be cognizant of where wires might be, or if it happens to be a wall that actually has plumbing on it, which isn't real common. You want to know where all that stuff is, and you want to be sure that you're not sending a nail through something important, because you'll hate yourself afterwards if you do that. And then while you're installing it, you can just use one of the other boards or pieces as a spacer to make sure that you're getting even gaps in between those as you go up or down. We find that doing the shiplap horizontally is a little bit better than doing it vertically. Vertically, we like how it looks vertically, but there's oftentimes a lot less to secure it to, just with the studs in the wall.
What do you think your favorite accent wall is?
Oh, I like to draw on marker accent walls. That's my favorite.
I like shiplap.
We've also done adhesive tiles. We've been kind of steering clear away from those, again, just because we're worried about kind of the longevity that they might hold, but we could revisit it.
Yeah, I know that there's some new companies that have came out more recently that are supposed to be a lot better.
Right. So we pick out those walls. Flooring is something that we definitely consider. I mean, even in the shopping process, when I'm shopping for an RV, if I see that the floor is in good shape and it has some design or color that might work as is and not have to be completely demoed out, that's a big plus for me.
Yeah, and how we've kind of worked around that so far with a few renovations is that we were able to keep the main floor, and then obviously we rip out the carpet in the slide, or if it was like in the bedroom or going up the beds, we rip that out and then replace it with a complementary luxury vinyl that kind of like ties in. So maybe the main level or main floor is kind of like a wood tone, then you can pair it with something solid, more like what we've personally done is a solid black luxury vinyl, and it seems to pair well together.
And it holds up well, and you just got to make sure, again, that you pick a fairly lightweight product, just so you're not adding another 400 pounds to your slide.
Yeah, you really want a luxury vinyl that's about 3 to 5 millimeters.
And then from there, I think we're just assessing overall, like, furniture. Are we keeping cabinets? Are we building new storage? Is there a banquette going in? What's happening with the couch area? So we just assess it. Is there anything that we're going to have to build? Entertainment center, fireplaces. Those are all big features that would be considered kind of in that build category for us.
Yeah, and then we also go over lighting. We really like to add some residential lighting into our RV renovations, again, to just give them that kind of like homey feel.
Yeah, it adds such a great touch. It's fairly easy to do. You just oftentimes need to add a switch to the lighting unit. And we have some videos, some saved stories, and I think a reel on part of that process. I know that there's a
lot of questions surrounding that, though. Let's just walk through that process real quick for anyone that might be considering putting a residential light in their RV.
Yeah, actually lately we've had quite a few questions where people were either trying to do it and it wasn't working for them, or they're just asking us what their approach is. But super simple, like in your RV wall, there's going to be usually 2 wires from the current fixture. One might be black, one might be white, maybe it's brown and white. Usually it's a dark and a light color. And then on the fixtures that you buy, there's going to be generally two wires. There might be a ground wire as well, but usually there's 2 wires. And what we do is usually just match up, white to white or light to light. We take that switch, and oftentimes you have to modify the fixture itself. So you have to drill a hole in the base of the fixture and kind of mount that switch in there. But then what you do is just you attach one end of the wire for the switch to the wall, one end of the wire to the switch to the wire coming out of the fixture itself. So it's really simple. Really simple that way. You just think of it as an electric circuit. When you hit the switch, it's just shutting that circuit off. So that needs to be in between part of the supply. And you just tuck everything up in there and install it. And the most important thing, though, is that you got to remember that it's a 12-volt system. So the light bulb needs to be a 12-volt light bulb.
Actually, the most important thing that you didn't cover sorry to call you out, you want to shut all the electric off in the RV before you start working on the lights.
You do. Of course I do that. I knock on wood, I haven't been shocked yet. So yeah, we unhook, I'll even unhook the battery and any kind of shore power whenever I'm doing any kind of electrical work like that.
Safety first.
And so as long as you get everything wired up properly and you're using a proper light bulb, that should work beautiful for you. There should be really no issues at swapping out. And we would always recommend using LED light bulbs just because if you are running off of battery power, 12-volt power, it's going to draw a whole lot less energy.
Yeah, and then as always, kind of touching back, it's important to make sure the light fixture you're ordering isn't too heavy again, you don't want to add a lot of weight into the rig. And then it's also important when ordering to measure and make sure that it's going to fit in the space that you're envisioning it in. There's definitely plenty of times that I find light fixtures that I'm in love with and I'm absolutely certain we're going to put them in the RV, and then I run the purchase past Derek and he's like, that's not going to fit. This cupboard door will hit that light and break it, or, whatever it may be. So you definitely want to take that into consideration too.
And they're small spaces. So you just got to remember that, what's going to fit over a table in a house might not fit as well over the table inside the RV.
Yeah. And of course, be cognizant as well that the ceilings aren't real high in travel trailers. So you also don't want your light fixture hanging way down and hitting someone in the head.
Right. The other thing, too, I would consider is any hanging, like free swinging light fixtures. You might want to consider a way to kind of hook that up for travel, just so it's not something that gets swinging like a big pendulum, when you're driving around and it makes the wires come loose or breaks the light bulb or the fixture. So if it is something that has a lot of hang to it, you just want to find a way to neutralize that for travel.
And then during the design process, you always love when I bring up different sink basins and different faucet and plumbing fixtures. That's definitely your favorite part of any renovation, I would say.
Yeah, I would vote to just keep it all factory. They knew what they were doing when they built it, so why change it?
You're going to put all RV renovators out of business with talk like that.
No, it's just because it's definitely my least favorite part of these renovations so far. I hope that'll change, someday, not too far away. But it's like any of these things. The more you do it, the more comfortable you get doing it. The more you learn, it gets easier, it gets quicker. But we've talked to a few different renovators now that they kind of indicate the same thing, that even though the plumbing itself is simple, it's a simple system. It's just a lot of headaches, because a lot of these tubes are kind of buried. They're in small spaces.
Yes.
I'm like all hunched up and twisted and, underneath kitchen cabinets and stuff. And it would be so much easier to do if you just ripped all the cabinets out and did it in an open area. But, we don't try to do that usually. So,
I mean, you've definitely said a time or two that you're real thankful that you practice yoga.
Yoga is probably needed if you're going to do a lot of RV plumbing. That's for sure.
Flexibility is important.
Right. And lighting too. I always find myself like up under there being like, oh God, where's my flashlight? Or I have to get my phone out. And so I always bring a light. That would be my tip.
But definitely plumbing and fixtures can add a lot to an RV renovation and again, make them feel so much homier and cozy.
Very cozy, very homey. The other thing we've found though too is that sinks get heavy real fast, so pay attention to that. But also, if you do end up keeping the current RV sink, you have to consider the idea that is often just plastic, and so you got to watch out too with the weight of the fixtures that you're putting on it. You can get these really big, huge kitchen sink faucets. And they can be so heavy that, again, when you're traveling and it's bumping around, those things could potentially crack and break the sink basin. So lots of things to think about. But those are some of the things that we talk about when we're in there and we're putting together the action plan. We make sure to take all our before pictures so that we can see that before and after.
I think the big things that you want to consider when ordering and shopping for things is just the weight that you're putting in your RV.
It's kind of, we're not taking stuff out and weighing it and then weighing stuff and putting it in, but we are kind of more or less like eyeballing, in a sense. Like we know the couch we took out, was relatively this heavy. The couch we're putting in, oftentimes it's lighter, But you just gotta keep those swaps in your mind.
Yeah, I've definitely had a few people reach out over the last year and say, "Oh, I accidentally ordered this couch and it's, weighs this much. Do you think I can put it in the RV? Or we ordered these floors and they're pretty thick. Do you think it's safe to put it in the RV?" You really want to look at that weight before you hit order.
And every RV is so different. I mean, some of them, every RV has, how much it weighs dry, but then it also has a weight for how much storage or capacity that it has, payload capacity. And those can vary so much depending on, the structure of the underlying trailer build and the axles. So that's something to consider too, because 124-foot travel trailer might only be rated for 1,500 pounds of additional cargo. That's all your stuff if you're camping in it, and if you're driving around with water and that sort of stuff. Another trailer the same size might be rated for 3,000 pounds. So in some of those bigger trailers where there's lots more cargo capacity, you might not have to nickel and dime the poundage that you're swapping in and out, but it's still something to be really aware of.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then from that interior design meeting, after we've went over everything, we've decided what's going to stay, what's going to go. We've measured everything so that when it's time for me to go and shop, I can just pull these documents out of Word or Notes and know, okay, I can order a couch less than 70 inches and it can be this wide. Instead of having to run out to the travel trailer and measure that space, we have everything in front of us. I know what I need to order and what size, which is really helpful.
Yeah, like April said, we measure all the windows, we measure all the countertops, all the furniture pieces, and we try to detail that as much as possible in Notes usually. That's just the iOS app, and so that pulls onto all of our phones, all of our computers, and no matter where we are, we're able to just pull that up and take a glance if we need to.
Yeah, and so from there, we've kind of decided everything that's going on inside, then we move outside and kind of go over that together as well during that design meeting.
Generally, we try to buy RVs that are in good shape and they're newer. So hopefully there's not a whole lot of disrepair on the exterior, but still, there's oftentimes things that got broken while people were camping.
Yeah, like screen doors, that happens a lot, door latches.
Yeah, or we might come across some seals that are kind of getting a little worse for wear and tear, and so we want to replace those. And
yeah, at this time, it's really like we kick the tires.
We do literally check out the tires because we've had some personal experience on the wrong end of that one. So we want to make sure that the tires are in good enough shape, depending on what the potential buyer might be using them for, and then that the axles look good, the brakes function, the bearings are all greased, so that stuff is all safe.
Yeah, and I feel that's so important. I feel like another big one that you've had to do a lot is just replace outdoor light bulbs. It seems like, I feel like every RV we buy, the outdoor lights don't turn on, and it's just because the light bulb's burnt out.
Yeah, I think that they're easy to leave on, especially if there's lights in an indoor storage compartment or outdoor storage compartment that goes indoors. It's real easy for people to just leave those on and they burn out. And so that's an easy fix. There's other simple cosmetic things like tank covers or just touching up some of the rusty spots, kind of removing any kind of rust that's beginning to form, and then recoating that with some metal paint.
Yeah, and of course we do a thorough cleaning, which is obviously not part of this design process, but I mean it happens with every RV. It ends up getting thoroughly power washed and cleaned, and the same goes for the inside. It gets a thorough cleaning as well.
And then we address all the caulking. So we just make sure that there's no current, issues and that there isn't anything that's going to develop in the near future. So just make sure that all those seals on the roof are all, properly caulked and sealed. Typically we use a Dicor product for the roof. And then we definitely, if it has a slide, check the rubber slide seals around it. And then we're real, from past experiences, I've seen the issues that can develop around the base of the slide, the floor. There's a little seal right down there, and we've seen water issues firsthand develop, with just a little gap, like a 1/2-inch gap down in that seal. So we make sure that we take care of all that stuff. And then really at that point in the design process, we'll decide if there's any systems that we might be upgrading. Not that we've done a whole lot of this at this point, but There might be fans that need replaced. There just might be part of a like jack component that would be better if it was powered. We've heard some really interesting things talking, with people already on this podcast that have inspired us to kind of look in some of those directions. But that would kind of round out, I think, what that whole design process is really all about.
Yeah, so then we have the design and we have it all in front of us. We have the measurements, the overall idea, and then it's really just time to get to work. And so Derek and our boys begin demo and I begin shopping.
You do more than just shopping, right?
Well, yeah, but I just mean...
No, she mostly does shopping.
I really do. Just kidding.
But yeah, we get to work and we don't necessarily have like a plan that, this day this is getting done and this day that is getting done. That's just how I like to roll because I hate to get behind. But
I really would like to have a plan, like a concrete plan. This is getting done this day. Forecast it out. Be like, this is the day we'll be done. It's not how Derek works, and it drives me bonkers.
I just know how the real world works, and I know that, if we estimate this certain part of the process is going to take 1 day, and there's a chance it's going to take 3.
But that's just fine. You build a buffer in there.
Yeah. Eventually what happens is I get to a point where I'm comfortable creating a punch list, and sometimes those punch lists are 2 pages long. So they're not necessarily a total punch list, but at that point, I think things kind of fall more into a more regulated schedule.
I think it's real cool. I think it's cool how you also, even though you maybe work off the cuff a little more, you also really keep yourself accountable with like, I don't want to call it like a journal, but...
Are you going to tell them about my RV renovation diary?
Yes.
I thought I had that locked up.
Yeah, so... I've noticed that you like to write down what you got done that day. Like day 1, I had a design meeting with April and did this. Day 2, I power washed the outside of the exterior and did this. Like you're holding yourself accountable by doing that.
Yeah, and I think that one of my hopes with that too is just that if I detail something that I did in the past, just memory-wise, like for me, if it's not something that I'm doing every day, day in, day out, even though it might be something I've done before, I might not totally recall how I did it or what I did to do it. So I think that's part of the process for me too, is to just take notes, hopefully, on some of that, so that if I encounter it again, and maybe it's not for 12 months, that I have something to look back on and be like, oh, okay, this is what we did there. And so I think that's part of what it began in, and then also just to kind of track how long these renovations are taking us. And
yeah, it is kind of cool to look back and be like, okay, day 13. Well, day 13 last time we were this far, or day 13 this time we're 4 days ahead of schedule compared to then.
It can be good and bad.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's like probably also an unnecessary evil.
Because if you get in that hole where you feel like you're behind, things just aren't as much fun, for me at least, when you're working from behind. But I don't know. So far, so good. These systems aren't perfect. They're just what we've been doing, to this point.
Do you wish you had a little bit more say in the design process?
I get a say. I had a little more say last time.
You did. Dude, you came up with that wood planked ceiling, which was, I liked it. It looked good, and I doubted you, but nice work.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
So yeah, I might let you come up with like a few more ideas this time.
Ooh, this sounds like a promotion.
I'm just kidding. You can come up with as many ideas as you want. I just might veto them all.
So that's our process so far, at least at this point. We're just about ready to begin renovation number 7. So this has been a developing process. It'll continue to develop. I'm sure there's things that we do now that, if we're doing this 5 years from now, we're going to look back and be like, what were we thinking? But
true.
That's how you grow. That's how you learn. I think it's better to be doing than to be stuck, in the mud, because you don't have all the perfect plans out in front of you or the perfect tools. So, and if you like what you hear on the podcast, please subscribe. There's a video version on YouTube if you're not aware of it. You can watch it and subscribe there as well. And if you have ideas for guests or ideas for questions to ask guests or topics, we're all ears on that one.
We have so many awesome episodes to release to you guys soon. We have a great episode coming out next week with another guest, and we're so excited to share all these ideas for giving your RV a new look.
See you next time.
Bye, guys.